G'day everybody, it's Michael Hanrahan here from Publish Central. I hope you're all having a good day and thanks so much for tuning in. Today we are going to talk about an introduction to self-publishing for business. So before we get started, there are a couple of slides I'm legally obliged to show you, so we're going to have a look at those first. Now, the first one is the code of conduct for the M365. So some of you have probably already seen this before if you've been tuning into other sessions, but I'll just leave that up there just for a second so you can all read it. The very short version is don't be a jerk. So I'm sure you're all familiar with that. And the next slide is just a thank you to all our wonderful sponsors without whom none of this would be happening. So I will again leave that up there just for a minute so you can all take that in. We're doing this at the start because I tend to ramble on, and if we do it at the end, we might not get to it. Okay, so there's our code of conduct and our sponsors. So thank you very much to them. So today we're going to look at an introduction to self-publishing for business. And the first thing I want to check is everybody in the right room. Now, normally that works when I'm presenting this at a conference. Obviously, if you've logged into the wrong session, you can figure that out right now and go and figure out where you should be. Now, you're all here to learn about why you would want to publish a book for your business. So what we're going to look at today, we're going to go through a few different things. We're going to look at the production side of things. So we're going to have a little bit of an overview of how to produce a book. First thing we're going to look at is why you would want to publish a book for your business as well. So we're going to do this in about an hour and a half. Now, I often do this session over 3 or 4 days at retreats and that kind of thing. So this is very much just an introduction, and hopefully it gives you enough to go away and think about publishing your own book. So now I will mention before we get into it any further, I'm very new to presenting this online. So if I accidentally show you a video of my cat or my Coles online order, I do apologize. So there we go. There's the first mistake already. Hang on. No, still not right. Hang on. There we go. Yep. Okay. So that's me. So normally I would be standing in front of you giving this talk, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of an impression of who you're listening to. So the first thing we're going to look at is why would you want to publish a book for your business? So you don't want to be a novelist, you don't want to be a poet, you don't want to be, famous and go on Oprah and all that kind of thing. You're business owners. So why would you want to publish a book? So a challenge all of us have as business owners is attracting people to our business, especially right now with what's going on in the world. That's become even more of a challenge. So these days, there's all sorts of ways to promote your business. Online advertising, social media, podcasts, newspapers and magazines are still around. All sorts of different ways to get your message out there. So you can easily do a web promotion. So with banner ads and that kind of thing. That can easily cost you $10,000 to $15,000. Obviously, the budget for those sorts of things are almost unlimited. Magazines, again, or newspapers, you can do an ad that can easily cost you $10,000 to $15,000 just for one ad. Or for that amount of money, you can also publish a book. So this is something that our authors consider part of their marketing budget for their business. So, the next question is going to be, well, how does a book help my marketing? So what we're going to do now is look at a few authors that we've worked with in the last few years. So Bushy Martin he runs a property investing company, and he wrote a book a couple of years ago. And I'm just going to show you just a few of the results he got from publishing this book. And I'll emphasize that this is just a few of the things he received, a few of the coverage, some of the coverage that he received. So you can see here, so that's an online article that he got, another one he got interviewed around the election. So Bushy often gets wheeled out around elections because property and negative gearing and capital gains tax and all that kind of thing are a big issue. So another interview, he got interviewed by David Koch. He got interviewed on his property investment strategy. Now this is the big one. He appeared on 60 Minutes. He also had another interview, and I haven't got it here, but he had another interview that he did on TV where his book was sitting on the counter in between him and the interviewer during the whole interview. So all this coverage that he got was on the back of having written and published a book. Again, he got rolled out near the election for that one. He appeared on the Mortgage Professional Australia site, and he also got mentioned at M365. And this is all on the back of his book, The Freedom Formula. And we'll just have a quick look at a couple more. So Pauline Nguyen. So she was interviewed by CEO Magazine, F Magazine. She appeared on Radio National. Interviews, more interviews. She was interviewed by Flying Solo. So again, you can see all sorts of different coverage. That one was a speaking engagement. Another interview. Interviewed by the City of Sydney for their What's On page. And again, she also got a mention to M365. I don't know if you can guess the name of her book from reading those headlines. This is all on the back of her book, The Way of the Spiritual Entrepreneur. And again, this is just a fraction of the coverage that Pauline received. And just one more, Craig Wilson. So interview with Inside Small Business, another interview. He appeared on 6PR, another radio interview. He was interviewed by Business Women Media, Venture Magazine, Mother and Baby, another podcast interview, another interview, Business Builders, and another one. Craig's had numerous TV appearances on the back of the publication of his book. And that's all from the publication of his book, Intuitive. So all of this is on the basis of spending $10,000 to $15,000 to produce a book. And as you can see, if you look at that as a return on your marketing spend, that is an absolutely fantastic return. That's easily $50,000 to $100,000 worth of media coverage, just that I've shown you there. Like I say, not to mention all the other coverage all of these authors have received. So why should you listen to me? Who am I? Well, you've already paid for your ticket. Too late now. I don't know what the refund policy is, but you have already paid for your ticket. So if you don't like bad jokes, this is going to be a very long session for you. I have over 20 years of experience in business publishing. I've worked with many best-selling authors on all types of business books. Co-founded the Australian Business Book Awards, which are about to open again for this year. I run the leading self-publishing business, Publish Central. Don't even know the name of my own company. We produce books to the same standards as Australia's major publishers. So this is really important, what you can do today in self-publishing. We'll talk about this a little bit more later. How did I get here? Walked, I'm in the front room of my house. That joke works a lot better when I'm at a conference, but anyway. My father was a writer, so I've been around this stuff pretty much from the day I was born. So I grew up around writers and editors and publishers and designers and all that kind of thing. When I was younger, my two biggest interests were writing and design. I did work experience at William Heinemann Australia, who unfortunately are no longer around. Did a writing and editing degree at Deakin University. And I've worked for Australia's best business book publishers. So that'd be Write Books and John Wiley and Sons. Most of you have probably heard of at least John Wiley. Write Books as a smaller company. 15 years ago, I started Michael Hanrahan Publishing Services. We've gone through a few iterations since then, and we are now Publish Central. So what do I want you to get out of today? To understand how a book can benefit you and your business. So I've already looked at that a little bit already. An overview of the process, including costs and timeframes. They're two of the first questions that people often ask. How much does it cost and how long does it take? So we're going to look at that. Now, this is absolutely key to what I want to do today. Something practical for you to go away with. Understanding how to choose a topic to write about and to create a contents list for your book. So that's the starting point for you actually writing. There's no point in you going away from this session thinking, hey, that Michael guy looked a lot like Chris Hemsworth and he was really cool, and not actually doing anything to write your book. So at the end of this, I'm going to give you a step to take to actually get started on your book, because all the information in the world doesn't help you at all if you don't actually go and use it. There'll be a Q&A at the end, and there is the wonderful Megan, our producer, is also tuned in. If there is anything you urgently want to say, any urgent questions during the session, just jump in on the chat box, and Megan will interrupt if she thinks that question needs to be answered straight away. And you don't need to frantically take notes, though of course you can if you want to. The slides will be available in a couple of days from our website. Just go to publishcentral.com.au/M365. So the whole presentation will be available for you. So why do you need to know this stuff? So you can build your profile. So we've already looked at some of the coverage a few of our authors have received earlier. So you can promote your business, and at the end of the day, that's what we all want to do. Again, especially right now, that's a bit tougher for some people. So you can stand out from the crowd in your market, and so you can publish a great book. So they're the sorts of things we're going to be focusing on today. Now, before we go any further, here's the single most important step. If you could leave the session after this next slide, and if you go away and do this one thing, it will have been worth it. Write a book. Okay, I know that seems extremely obvious. The number of people I talk to who say they want to write a book and then don't, like I said, I've been around this my whole life. So many people I meet in any circumstance, a business circumstance, at a barbecue, down the street, whatever it is, they say, I'm going to write a book one day. And of course, most of them don't. So that is the most important step out of everything we're going to talk about. None of it matters if you don't write a book. Now, here's the next most important step. Yeah, it's that important. So make sure you do it. Otherwise, like I say, none of the information you're going to get today is going to help you. Now, if it all seems a bit overwhelming, which I completely understand, most of you probably aren't experienced writers, you haven't grown up wanting to write a novel or be a famous author or anything like that. It seems a bit overwhelming. You can do this. I work with business people all the time who've written a book purely for their business. That's the only reason they've done it. They don't pretend that they're going to be the next best-selling author, the next Peter Carey, or the next whoever. It's just a practical exercise that they did for their business, and with the right guidance, they've gotten through the process, no worries. So the authors that you saw before, Bushy and Craig, that was both of them. For both of them, that was their first book. For Pauline, that was her second book, and all three of them are working on their next books right now. So everybody starts somewhere. Now, if you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, you might be thinking, oh, where do I start? Where do I start? What software do I need? All this kind of thing. So my business partner, Anna, and I have spent a lot of time researching this so that you don't have to. So we've prepared a really comprehensive list of all the software you need and everything you need to get started on your book. So get ready with your pens because this is important. Here's what you need to write your book. Okay, and that's the end of the list. Microsoft Word. That's it. So don't get carried away thinking it's complicated or you need, people often have long conversations about what software they need and they want to go to a writer's group and do all these kinds of things. All the time you spend worrying about that is time that you're not writing. Sit down with Microsoft Word and your laptop, and that's it. You're ready to go. Obviously, you don't even need Word. Google Docs, even the Notepad app on whatever computer you use will be absolutely fine. So don't get carried away with all that junk that stops a lot of people writing. Just sit down and write. So some things to understand about publishing a book. These are just a few general things to think about before you get started. So first thing, writing and publishing a book is going to be fun. So I've been lucky enough just this week, this is always my favorite day, we had one book delivered from the printer this week, and I get to ring the author up and tell them that their book is in, because we get them first because they come to us first and then they get shipped to the author. So I got to ring her up and say, your book is in, and she was just over the moon. She was so excited. The whole thing is really, really good fun. I've always said to myself, the day I stop enjoying it, I'm going to stop doing it. I've been doing it for 20 plus years. There hasn't been a day in that 20 years where I've got up and not enjoyed it. So just remember that and keep it in mind. Don't feel overwhelmed. It's a fun process. So and that certainly helps. And the next step is don't feel overwhelmed. So with the right help, you can get through the process very easily. Now, if you publish a high quality book and have a good plan for how to use it after it's published, it will return the investment many times over. So again, we looked at Bushy, Pauline and Craig. Again, easily $50,000 to $100,000 worth of coverage they received there, and look, probably a lot more. And that's on the back of spending, $15,000 to get the book produced, plus obviously the time it spent them to write it and any marketing expenses. But $15,000 to actually publish the book. Another key point of that is have a good plan. So that's crucial as well. The book does not do the work for you. So we're all in business. We all know people who've started a website and thought that was it. That was starting a business. It's not. You've got to start the website and then market the website. A book is exactly the same. You've got to publish the book and then use it. The book doesn't do the work itself. So that's just something else to keep in mind. You do have to have a good plan for after it is published. Now, if you do it well, your book will be as good as a book from a major publisher. So the way I describe that to the authors that we work with is if you put a little penguin logo on any of the books we've worked on, you would absolutely believe that. So what I normally do at this presentation when I give it in person, the very, very first thing I do is hand out 6 or 7 books that we've worked on, and people are absolutely amazed what you can do with self-publishing these days. So we use, I worked at John Wiley & Sons. I was managing editor at John Wiley & Sons before starting this business. We right now use the same editors, same designers, same printers, all the same services that we used when I was in-house at Wiley, and I still know the gang at Wiley. You would actually get more experience working with us, more experienced people working on your book than you would working with John Wiley. So there are all sorts of high quality publishing businesses out there these days that will be able to do a great job with your book. And the other thing that helps with that is that technology's come a really long way in the last 6, 7, 8 years. So it's much more affordable to produce a high quality book. So don't for a second think that your self-published book's going to be low quality. 15 years ago, they certainly were. These days, they're certainly not. So a little while ago, I got asked to write an article about all the things that can happen when you publish a book. So I wrote it just turned into a tip article so I could get as much as I could into it. And it was 50 things that can happen when you publish a book for your business. Now, the reason it was only 50 is that there was a word limit on the article. But what we're going to do now is I'm just quickly going to flick through some of the things that were in that article, and we'll just quickly go through them. So again, remember, all of this is about your business. It's not about you being a famous novelist or wanting to see your book in stores. So these are all the sorts of things that our authors get when they publish their books. So television appearances, we've already had a chat about that. You've seen some examples early on. Attract new clients who read your book. I've had first-hand experience of this. So I've self-published a book about how to self-publish a book, and I've had people ring me up, and literally I've never had any contact with them before. They ring me up and say, hey, I just got your book from the library, or hey, I just got your book from a bookstore, really liked it, can we have a chat? So that's one very positive thing your book can do for you. Conference speaking gigs, no doubt everybody listening has attended lots of conferences. You will have noticed a lot of the speakers have published books, so it is a very good way to open doors for getting in at conferences. Boost your profile in your business, so again we've already looked at some examples of that. Connect with leaders in your industry. So this is one that people often kind of don't expect and don't think about. And these are all the sorts of things that start to happen with your book that you just didn't realize would happen before you published it. So especially if you've been in your industry, maybe you're a mid-level business or something like that, and there's kind of industry leaders that you wish you could connect with or reach out to and have a conversation with and get to know and all that kind of thing. The book is a fantastic way to connect with people. So, and it is absolutely as simple as you send them a copy of the book. So write up a nice personal letter, whack a copy in, wrap it up really nicely, make sure it's all well packaged, and just say to them nothing else other than, hey, I've written this book, I love your business, I love what you do, can we have a coffee sometime? It's as simple as that. Reconnect with old clients. Now, this is the same kind of principle. Just send them a copy of the book. We've all got clients we haven't heard from for 2 or 3 years. You don't want to hassle them. You don't want to be checking in with them all the time. And, they're like, oh, they're just trying to sign me up again and get more money out of me. Send them a copy of the book. Don't make it a marketing opportunity. Don't make it a sales pitch. Just send them a copy of the book. So again, hey Fred, we haven't heard from you for a couple of years. Hope you're well. We just published this book. We thought you might be interested. So it's a great way to connect with clients, with old clients. Be invited onto podcasts and blogs. This happens all the time. Again, we saw some examples earlier. Within about a month or 2 of my book coming out, I'd probably done 10 or 12 podcast interviews, webinar interviews. I got 1 radio appearance, got interviewed by the Australian newspaper, the Huffington Post, all these sorts of things, all on the back of the book coming out. So again, similar to as we saw earlier with Bushy, Pauline and Craig. Write newspaper and magazine articles. So again, you've probably noticed yourself that many articles that you read, at the end of it, it says, so-and-so has just released a book. So again, a book is a great way to get your foot in the door with that kind of thing. Publishing your book also lends itself to that because you can actually take extracts from your book and turn them into articles for magazines, newspapers, and that kind of thing. And in fact, some things that are published are literally just a chapter from the book. So, you know, happens all the time in, you know, the weekend magazines and that kind of thing with the major newspapers. They literally just publish a chapter from a book and say this book is now available, you know, from da 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 da. So, again, a very good opportunity once you publish your book. Now, this is actually one of my favorite features of having published a book that people don't really think about again until their book's actually published. It's a great way to qualify potential clients. So again, using my book as an example, my book about how to self-publish a book, I send that out to anybody who asks for it. I either email a PDF copy or whack a copy in the post to them, send it out left, right, and center. Just get as many copies out there as you can. That's the whole idea of it. And the book is written, it's written to do two things. Number one, it explains what we do and, you know, the steps and the process and how we do it. But it's also got very much a feel of what it's like to work with us. So you've already experienced my terrible sense of humor. That actually goes throughout the book as well. And so what you're going to get from that is people are going to read that book and it's going to reflect me and my personality and how we do business. And they're going to think one of two things. They're going to think, hey, this Michael guy is really funny and really knows his stuff. I can't wait to talk to him. Or they're going to think, this guy Michael's a real idiot. I really wouldn't work with him if he was the last person on earth. And either way is absolutely fine. If you loved my book and thought it was great and you're going to be good to work with, you're going to want to work with us. If you thought it wasn't for you, then working with us is not going to be for you. So that's another really good kind of unexpected benefit of sending your book out to people. Turn it into 12 months of blogs. Again, this is a really powerful way to use your book. One thing our authors always notice once their books come out is all the different ways you can repurpose it. There's so many different things you can do. So it's one of the first things I did, and it's one of the first things many of our authors do, is chop the book up and turn it into 12 months of blogs. Now, the first thing you're probably thinking when I say that is, hang on, aren't you giving your book away for free if you do that? And the answer is yes, you absolutely are. 100% you are. If you go to my website and download, you know, 25 blogs or whatever it is, you've got my book. You've got a free copy of my book. That is still really useful to me because I've connected with you. So it's nothing to do with book sales. We're not aiming for book sales. You know, book sales are great. I'm not saying they're not great, but that's not why we're doing it. So authors sometimes say to me when I have a first phone call with them, say, how much will I make per book? And I say, that's the wrong question. You're already focusing on the wrong thing. So turn your book into 12 months of blogs. Very, very easy to do and a very good use of your book. Have a book launch. So again, it's another way, a great way to gain exposure. So you can invite the media, you know, invite, like we talked about before, invite old clients, invite potential clients, invite your friends and family as well, make it a fun thing. Just make sure, and this is a quick tip, the mistake I see authors make, not the authors we work with, but we see authors make, is not having a plan for their launch. So it's like anything else in your business, make a plan for it and make sure it makes financial sense. So it's very easy to think I'm kind of expected to have a book launch, so I'll kind of invite my friends and family and I'll invite a few clients and I kind of muddle through and I hire a hotel room and I don't quite know what I'm doing. And then at the end of the process, people have spent $7,000 and really not gotten much out of it. So have a plan for it. Nothing wrong with spending $7,000 on a launch if that's part of your strategy and you've got 100 potential clients in the room or 50 potential clients. That's $7,000 very well spent. So just make sure you have a plan for a launch and you don't kind of stumble into it and just do something that doesn't really work. Now this one's kind of self-explanatory. Promote your book on social media. You can get, obviously put the cover on social media while you're working on the book, start announcing it a month or two before it comes out. Hey, coming soon, go to our website to pre-order, that kind of thing. Promoting your book on social media is a fairly obvious and self-explanatory one. Sell it through bookstores and on Amazon. So this is another way for you to reach potential clients that you probably don't have right now. Partner with other authors. So this is, again, another slightly unexpected opportunity that you might find. We have another author that we work with who's written a book about how to write a book, and obviously that fits perfectly with our book about how to self-publish a book. So we've partnered with her on various things of sending out both copies of our books to potential clients, and those people might turn into clients for both of us. Use your book as part of a training program. Now, this is a fantastic idea. A lot of our authors do this. You can either chop the book up and turn it into a training program, or you can use it as part of the training program. So, when people sign up, they get a copy of the book, or, maybe the program's based around the book, whatever it is. But yeah, using it as part of a training program is very useful. It will explain what you do. So this is kind of what I referred to before about our book reflecting how we do things. So another reason I send it to people, potential clients, is that if they read it before they start working with us, it actually helps them through the process. And I often have authors say to me, oh, you sent me your book a week ago, can we have another chat? I understand it a lot more now and I'm really keen to go ahead. So it'll give people a head start on working with you. The media will seek you out for comment. So once you've published a book, you immediately become an expert. You stand out from your competitors. There's a lot more books around these days, but still most people have not written a book. So you'll still stand out from your competitors if you've written and published a book. You can turn it into an audiobook. Again, that's just another way to reach people. Audiobooks 3 years ago probably weren't essential. These days they probably are. They've been on a very steep increase recently. You've probably seen yourself Amazon ads for Audible and that kind of thing in the cinemas now and all over the place. So audiobooks are becoming very popular. You can create a Facebook group for readers to interact. So, again, maybe if we use Bushy as an example, he talks about his books are about investment property. Start a Facebook group for users and people can go in and discuss the property market or something like that. So just another avenue to interact with people. You can get testimonials from readers to help promote your business. So a lot of our authors do that when they reprint their book for the first time. So when the book is first printed, they send it around to some people they know and say, could you read the book and write a testimonial for me? And then they add the testimonial when they reprint the book. So as I mentioned, that was actually from an article, 50 things you can do to do with your published book for your business. So if you do want to check out the rest of those, just go to our website. So again, even the 50 things is just a small sample. So there are some things that can happen when you publish your book. And like I say, these are things that happen for all of our authors. We see these sorts of things every day. Here's something that will happen when you publish your book. You'll become recognized as a leader and an expert in your field. So, we all know, well-known business people who the books have become a really important part of what they're doing. So the Tim Ferrisses of the world, that kind of thing. Obviously, the books have been really pivotal for those sorts of people. So it really is just a fabulous way to get yourself out there and become a leader in your industry. And so this is what I mentioned before. Success is not about book sales. I'm going to mention that quite a few times during this session because it's really, really, really important. It's very much about establishing your credibility and promoting your business. It's not about book sales. We have some authors who spend $15,000 to publish their book, only print 200 copies. Obviously, if you sold every single one of those, you're still not going to cover $15,000, but their books are a huge success for them. I had an author a few years ago who printed 1,000 copies and he planned to give every single one of them away. So it's not about the book sales. And just to emphasize this, I had a chat to Bushy Martin about this, who we met earlier, just to get his feedback on it. So I asked him, what do you think, success, is it about the book sales or is it not about the book sales? And he said, success is not about the book sales. So that actually didn't happen. I haven't asked Bushy this, but I know Bushy well. And if I did ask him, he would say exactly that. So I hope I've emphasized that enough. So now what we're going to look at now, so that's given you a little bit of an overview of why you would want to publish your book. So what we're going to look at now is the different publishing options. So there's basically three main publishing options, and it operates on a spectrum. So you can see traditional down one end, self-publishing up the other, and hybrid in the middle. And I could mark another 37 different steps on there for different degrees of variation between the models. But they're the three main models that all publishing models are based on. So traditional publishing is the option most people are familiar with. So the author writes the book, the publisher pays the costs, and they share the profit or loss. And so that happens with companies like Penguin, Hardy Grant, John Wiley & Sons, all the companies most people are familiar with. That's traditional publishing. Hybrid publishing is when the author writes the book and shares the cost or profit loss, shared the profit or loss with the publisher in terms of they help pay the production costs for the book and that kind of thing. So you can see the difference with the first point. In the first one, it's the publisher paying all the costs. And the second one, the author is also contributing to the cost of the book. Now that might take the form of literally just a flat payment, so they might contribute $10,000 or $15,000 to the production of the book, or the other option that is quite common is they might agree to buy back a certain number of copies. So they might sign up to a contract but agree to buy 2,000 copies of the book. So that obviously helps underwrite the production costs as well. And obviously the third option is self-publishing. So this is what most small business authors do. Most business authors, the author writes the book, pays all the production costs and keeps all the profit or loss. So the reason this is the popular option for business authors is basically three main reasons. So the first one is you don't have to worry about being picked up by a publisher. So I was part of the process of picking up manuscripts when I was at Wiley. You just have a pile of, literally dozens and dozens and dozens of manuscripts there that you have to look through. They just come in all the time. And so the number of manuscripts that get published each year is much smaller than the number of manuscripts that get submitted. So that's a big hurdle to overcome to begin with. So if you are self-publishing, you don't have to worry about that. You can guarantee that your book gets out into the world. The second significant advantage, the second significant advantage for choosing self-publishing for business authors is it's quicker. So with the traditional publishing model, the timeframes are often 12 or 18 months in advance for the production of the book. And then if you add in a month or two to find out if you do get picked up, it can easily take 12 to even 24 months to get your book published if you do get picked up by a publisher. And that's if you get picked up. So if you're a novelist, you're probably not going to be too fussed about that. You'll just be excited that your book got picked up. If you're a business owner, even waiting 9 or 12 months, that's a huge opportunity cost for you, huge amount of time that your book isn't out there. So that's another big advantage for business authors with self-publishing. And the last one is you retain full control of the book once it's released. So some of the things we talked about in the earlier slide, producing a course, putting it on your website, blogs, all that kind of thing. There are restrictions on what you can do if you go with a traditional publisher. So they have paid to produce the book. They are going to have some control over how you can use it, which is entirely reasonable. That's not unreasonable, but is something you have to deal with. If you're a self-publisher, you have no restrictions because you are your own publisher. So you can chop it up, you can put it on Facebook, you can turn it into a course, you can chop it in half and turn it into 2 little books if you want. You can do whatever you want with it. And again, for a business author, that's very, very powerful. So what are the different self-publishing options then, if we presume that's the preferred path for most business authors? So there's basically 2 options for a self-publishing author. You can DIY, and that's where you find all the suppliers yourself, or you can work with a self-publishing provider. So there's no right or wrong answer. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. The way to think of it is it's exactly like building a house. So if you're going to build a house, you can go and find your own plumber, your own electrician and painter and all those sorts of things, and you can manage the whole process yourself and go down there every weekend and make sure everything's on track. Or you can just find a builder and tell them what you need and go and check on it once a month and they'll take care of everything for you. So very similar situation. If you're DIYing, you have to find your own editor, your own proofreader, your own cover designer, all that kind of thing. If you work with a self-publishing provider, you don't have to worry about any of those sorts of details. You have one company take care of the whole thing for you. So as I said before, there's no right or wrong answer. There's advantages and disadvantages of both. So we're going to look at each option. Why would you do it yourself? So these are just 4 main reasons. There's obviously lots of reasons, but these are the 4 key ones. You want to keep costs down as much as possible. So if you do manage the process yourself, you're not paying someone else to just manage the process for you. So you're taking on that role yourself, probably doing your own homework, talking to different suppliers, all that kind of thing. So like anything in business, you're trading money for time. So you're saying, instead of paying someone else to do this step, I'm going to manage the whole thing myself. And the other thing you can do if you are doing it yourself is you can actually hunt around and find the cheapest suppliers. I don't recommend you do that, but you can if you really want to. Now, you want to learn about the process so you can manage future books yourself. I spoke to an author just the other day. He's got a plan for 9 books. So she's mapped out 9 books that she wants to do over the next few years. She wants to learn as much about the process as she can. So obviously she'll be a rookie for the first couple of books and she'll probably muddle through a bit. But by the time she gets to number 9, she'll be an absolute expert and she can just put her books out like an expert. So The next reason is you have particular people you want to work with. So this isn't uncommon. You might have an editor or designer that you'd prefer to work with, so you want to manage it yourself. Now, having said that, plenty of companies like ours will allow you to bring your own editor or designer to the project. So that's not prohibitive. So if you are thinking about that, do your homework on it. But that is a reason some people do it yourself. And the last reason, kind of related to the first one, you have more time to invest than money. Now, again, this is a really, really important slide. So 2 common DIY pitfalls to avoid. This is 2 ways your DIY self-publishing can go completely off the rails. So the first one is not adequately planning your project. Now, obviously, that's true for most projects. Where we see it happen with self-publishing is authors kind of plan it sequentially and only talk to people in the order that they think they need them. So they go, okay, the first step is editing. I'm going to go and find myself an editor. And then when the editing's done, they say, okay, I'm going to go and find myself a designer. And then the designing's done, and they say, I'm going to go and find myself a printer. And only at that point do they realize that the designer didn't know what printing specifications were needed and the book hasn't been set up properly. So then they have to go back a step and get the book reformatted and all this kind of thing. So if you are going to DIY it yourself, plan the whole thing out start to finish from the beginning to end. Find your editor, find your designer, find your printer, do all of that before any work commences. When we're planning any project, absolutely any project, the very, very, very first thing we actually plan for is the printing, even though it's the last step. Because if the editing isn't done correctly, so formatting actually starts with the editing, and then that goes on to the designer, and then that goes on to the printer. If you haven't worked out your printing specifications to begin with, your designer might not do the right thing and your editor might not do the right thing. So it's very important to adequately plan your project start to finish to begin with. Using suppliers who have little or no experience working on books. This is another common one that we see. It usually goes something like, I'll get my web guy to do my book cover, or you know, my next door neighbor writes a school newsletter. I bet they'll be a good book editor. So the first thing you should do when you talk to any person you're thinking of using is send me some books that you've worked on. Books, 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 books. I don't care how many websites you've done. I don't care how many newsletters you've edited. Send me some books. And if they say, well, I can't normally do newsletters, that is not somebody you want to work with. So again, absolutely key point. We do see people get into trouble with that. You might have an awesome web designer, doesn't mean they can do a good book. Now, why would you use a self-publishing company? Now, the first one's obvious. You don't want to manage the process yourself. Some people are just really busy. You know, most of us are as business people, really busy. You know, when we had our new website done, I'm not going to wrestle with that. I don't know anything about that. I just want to hire a company that's going to take care of it all for me. So you don't want to manage the process yourself. You would like to have somebody on call for advice throughout your project. So obviously, if you're working with different people at different stages, you don't have one person tying the whole thing together. That one person is actually you. So you've got no one to call on to get advice from beginning to end of your project. You want to publish the best book you can. So you will usually get a better result with a self-publishing company. And there's a number of reasons for that. One of the main ones is obviously you'll probably get more experience, more experienced people working on your book. And the other one is you do have that one person following the book all the way through. So I project manage all of our books. So I talk to the authors from day one when they contact us, right through, as I mentioned before, right through to the day when their book comes in from the printer. I'm always in contact with them. So that gives me a really good understanding of the book and what they're trying to do with it, and it usually gets a better outcome. So most self-publishing companies you work with, you'll just have one single person that you deal with all the way through. And the last one is you want to minimize the risk of problems. So we actually have what we call a rescue service. Every year, probably 4 or 5 times a year, someone comes to us, they tried to DIY it, they got halfway through and they started to run into the problems I mentioned before. It often happens when they get to the printing stage and they realize that nothing's been done in accordance with how they wanted to print the book. So if you have one person managing the whole process, you do minimize the risk of problems. How do you choose a self-publishing company? Okay, so step 1, go to publishcentral.com.au and you're done. That's it. Next slide. No, seriously. So you choose a self-publishing company, just like anything else. You know, find an author you know who self-published their book, find out who they used. Research online. If you find a company that you think it looks interesting, Google them, do some homework on them, find out if people are complaining about them. I've got a few, and I absolutely won't mention them, but I've got a few companies I know if you said, oh, I've talked to so-and-so, I would just flat out say, do not go with them, they're terrible. I wouldn't say it that bluntly, but you get the idea. There are companies that everybody knows really just don't do a good job. So do your homework. Choose a self-publishing company just like you choose anything else. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the self-publishing steps. Again, this I often wrap into, there's a 4-day retreat that I'm involved in for authors, and we go through this in much greater detail. So we're just going to really quickly whiz through it here. Now, these steps, these will be pretty much the same. So I mentioned the steps we use in our processes here. These are the literal exact steps we go through with our authors. These are the steps my book is based on. Most companies you work with, so most companies like ours, you'll go through a very similar process. So these are pretty much the standard steps to produce a book. If you are DIYing it, these are still the steps you will go through. You will just have to be managing that side of things yourselves. So planning, obviously, writing, editing, design, proofreading, printing, ebook, print on demand, and audiobook, and distribution are the major steps in the self-publishing process. Now, as I mentioned before, one of the first things people obviously want to know about with a new project is how much is it going to cost. So for a 35,000 word book, so most of the books we work on are 30 to 40,000 words, sometimes 50,000 words, but 30 to 40,000 is a really good target length for a book in this kind of area. So, so these are estimated costs for a 35,000 word book. And that's presuming that it's a standard book. So you haven't got any fancy printing, or, you know, if you're a terrible writer and your book needs lots of editing, your costs will be higher. So these are kind of for standard production of a book. So $7,000 to $9,000 should get you a good result. You can certainly produce a decent book for that amount. $9,000 to $12,000 will get you a better result. If you want to work with a highly experienced team and the best in the business, you need to be spending $12,000 to $15,000. So you've heard me mention $15,000 a few times. That is entirely the ballpark for getting an experienced team to work on your book. So experienced editors, designers, that kind of thing. So we're just going to look at some common cost mistakes. So be wary of an editor who gives you a quote without looking at your manuscript. So it's very, very important to look at the manuscript before you do a quote. So I never, ever, ever provide a fixed editing cost without having seen the manuscript. If you describe your book to me, I'll give you an idea. I'll say, oh, that'd probably be $2,500 to $3,500 for the editing, but I will never give a fixed quote without seeing the manuscript. So the reasons are obvious. We can't assess the level of editing without seeing the book. So some editors will give you a quote just on the length of the book. That's not a good idea and is a bit of a red flag. Don't forget to factor in other costs such as publicity or a book launch. Now, your costs for these things can be zero, anywhere up to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, depending on what your budget is. So you can do all your own publicity if you want to, and you can have some success doing that. You can have a book launch or not have a book launch, and if you do have one, you can do it cheaply or more expensively. So just don't forget to factor that in. Everything I've talked about with, you know, $12,000 to $15,000 is just to produce the book, and that's usually printing about 200 to 400 copies to start off with. So don't forget to factor in any other costs you might need. You can easily, some of our authors spend another $5,000 to $10,000 on publicity. So just keep that in mind. And again, just like everything, make sure any quotes you receive cover everything you need. So make sure there's no surprises. You know, some companies sell packages that only include printing like 5 copies or something like that. So just make sure you've got everything you need in any quote that you get. Now, again, looking at a standard 35,000 word book, this is just a quick overview of the time frames. So 4 to 6 weeks for editing, 4 to 6 weeks for design and layout, 4 to 6 weeks for the cover design. Now, this happens alongside the editing and interior design, so that's not an additional 4 to 6 weeks. That happens simultaneously. Proofreading, about a week. Printing, 2 to 3 weeks. You can get printing done even quicker than that, but it gets more expensive. Ebook, print on demand, and audiobook, 4 weeks. And again, that happens alongside the printing. So those processes happen simultaneously, so it's not an extra step. So generally the schedules we work out for our authors are about 3 months. That's our kind of standard time. But you should expect about 3 to 4 months to produce a book. Honestly, right now, we've had a few that have been going on for longer than that because of everything that's going on in the world right now that has slowed a few people down. Now, just some quick time frame tips. Again, this one's fairly obvious. Discuss and confirm your timeframes with any providers before signing up with them. So they should absolutely be able to lock in timeframes for you. Yeah, they can't expect you to sign up if they can't guarantee your timeline. If you're having a book launch, allow at least 2 weeks between the expected delivery date of your books and the launch date. So if you're expecting your books to be delivered on the 11th of May, don't schedule your launch for the 12th of May. People do try and do this because they want to get their books out as quickly as possible. If you have any holdups, if your editor gets sick or the printer, their machine breaks down and you lose a couple of days, you're going to be in trouble and under lots of pressure. So don't schedule your launch for the day after your books are meant to come in. Now, this is a really good tip that authors often don't think of. Start on your cover as soon as you can. And the reason you do that is you can then start using it for marketing and publicity and social media and put it in your email signature. You can start promoting your book. So one of the very, very first things we do with authors, in fact, pretty much the day they sign up, is we start working on their cover. So if your book is coming out, so like I said, a standard publishing timeline for us is 3 months. So if someone starts work with us and their book's going to come out in 3 months, if we start on that cover straight away, if it takes a week or two to get a rough cover, it doesn't have to be finished, but get something that's usable, then they've then got 2.5 months to be promoting the book with the cover before it's published. So start on your cover as soon as you can. Again, any providers that you talk to, make sure you talk to them about that. Now, unfortunately, like everything, there are some shady operators in the publishing industry. So these are just a few quick things to look out for. Companies that make claims about the huge sales you will achieve, that's obviously a trick just to sign you up. Like anything in retail, absolutely anything, nobody can guarantee the sales you'll receive. I've seen books, I've worked on books that we expected to sell 3,000 copies and they sold 100,000. I've worked on books that we expected to sell 50,000 and they've sold 4,000. So it's like anything in retail, no one can guarantee you that. Now, this comes back to the hybrid publishing that we were talking about earlier. Beware of packages where you pay most or all of the production costs of the book, but then share any profits with the company. So this is a dodgy hybrid publishing deal. So it's not all hybrid deals are like this, but everybody who works in publishing, this is where we hear of people having the most problems. Hybrid deals where they have underwritten all of the costs of the book without even realizing it most of the time. And then when the profit comes out, when the book comes out, they share profit with the company. So be very, very careful. If you're a business person, obviously you understand those sorts of issues. Make sure you're not paying to produce the book, but then sharing any profits with somebody else. Beware of companies that want to claim any rights in your book. So again, this is something we see authors do get caught up with this. You can get into a real mess actually, and it can be very hard to get yourself out of. If you assign any copyright or anything like that to the company that you're working with, that should absolutely not happen. You should retain full copyright in the content of your book. So be very careful with that. Companies that don't do any marketing of your book but then take a cut of the sales. Some companies do this and they say that that's the way they charge you a fee for the marketing services they're providing. The distribution services that they're providing. But that is not reasonable at all. If you're the one who's out there promoting the book, getting yourself on, in the media like we saw earlier, and the book does really well, they're making an extra profit on the back of your work. So that's not how that should work. We charge our authors simply a fixed $99 fee for each distribution option they take up. If they sell 5 copies, 5,000 copies, or 5 million copies, they don't owe us any more or less money. A lot of companies do work that way, so that's fine, but be careful of the ones that take a share of your sales without helping you promote the book. Now, companies that say they will market and promote your book at international book fairs. So there's 2 things about this, and this is a common one with the dodgy companies that are out there. Number one, most authors don't need marketing at international book fairs anyway. Most of the authors we work with, they've got enough, their plates are full just using their book in Australia and running their business in Australia. International exposure doesn't help them anyway. And even if it would help you, all these companies do is take your book to the Frankfurt Book Fair, put it on a table with 200 books and point to it occasionally. You're not at the fair, you don't know the difference. They come back and say, yeah, I had a few conversations about your book. And then a month later they say, no, nothing happened with it, sorry about that. So don't get sucked in by thinking you're going to get international exposure with that. You're absolutely not. Now, here's just another legally mandated slide, competition week 2. So I'm going to leave that up there for a second for you to grab out your phones if you're interested and snap the QR code. If we get to the end and you missed it, just let me know and we'll just zoom back through and go to this page again. I think the prize this week is a red Lamborghini. Is that right, Megan? Red Lamborghini?
Okay, Michael, stop. No. Isn't it a free book contract with you? Is that what it is?
No. It's a red Lamborghini and a book contract with us.
Yes. No. Just to reiterate, I actually don't know what the prize is, but also remember, if you don't quite capture it now, the recording will be up later and you can have a look at whatever point this is in the video to find that QR code again. But I'll share on the socials today what the prize is.
Yeah, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
That's wonderful, Megan. I actually honestly don't know what the prize is. I'm fairly certain it's not a red Lamborghini. So anyway, I hope people have snapped that, and as we said, you can grab it later if you need to. So I mentioned earlier on, I want you to go away with something practical. Again, I know this has been wildly entertaining, but it's most useful if you go away and actually use the information that you've got. So we're just going to look, and this is again, very, very briefly, we're going to look very briefly at a technique for you to come up with content for your book. So again, this is something we usually deliver over a 4-day writing retreat, but this still should give you enough to go away and bounce around some ideas in your head. So what are you going to write about? I get this question all the time. People say, I'd love to write a book about my business. I don't know what to write about. If you can't find something to write about in your business, I'm surprised that you're still in business. If you've been doing anything that you're doing for more than a year or even less than that, you can write about it. I could write 37 books about what I do. There's so many topics you can write about. So what we're going to look at now is, again, just a really rough and ready way to come up with some ideas to write about. So step 1, brainstorming. Now, again, I'm just reiterating, this is a book for your business. So what is a common problem your clients or potential clients have? That should be your starting point. So for me, again, using my business as an example, they don't know how to publish a book. They want to learn how to publish a book. So they're not necessarily going to do it themselves. They will probably still come to us, but education for them about how to do it helps us, helps them come to us, helps them, all those sorts of things. So what problems do your clients or potential clients have that you could solve with a book? What do you want to be known for? So I want to be known for self-publishing for business. My book is literally about self-publishing for business. What can you do that your competitors can't? So again, we've mentioned this a few times this is about making you stand out from your competitors. And again, related, what do you do better than your competitors? So what advantage do you have? What service do you provide they don't? What can you really hammer home as an advantage with your book? Or alternatively, are you trying to move into a new market? So we've talked about Bushy a few times. Maybe Bushy has an idea about moving into, specifically residential property or something like that. So he can write a book about that, and that can help him move into that market. So that's, yes.
Sorry, just to jump in before you move on, just a couple of questions that I think relate to the thinking of a book topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Person has asked, how can they figure out if their book idea is good and they're not sure if they can trust their friends to give them the truth?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. You can't trust your friends to give you the truth. I will tell you that right now. Don't show it to your friends. Don't rely on them. They are not the people to help you with this. I'm sure they're lovely people, but this is a business problem, a business thing that you're working on. So we see authors all the time come to us and say, oh, my friend said it was fantastic. It's like, well, of course your friends are going to say it's fantastic. What else are they going to say? Even your closest most trusted friends are going to try and give you positive feedback. So, and that's all due respect to your friends. I'm sure they're lovely people. My friends would do the same thing. So getting feedback on your book. So road testing your topic. So here's what to do. Find a few trusted people in your target market. So not your friends, trusted people in your target market. So maybe it's a current client who you have a really good relationship with, or you can actually just pay someone to give you this kind of feedback. Find a few trusted people in your target market. Tell them what you're trying to do with the book. Now, this is pivotal. Where we see people get into trouble is they just email the book to someone, or the idea or the topic or whatever it is. They just email it to someone and say, oh, tell me what you think. And it's like, well, I can't answer that question. What are you trying to do with your book? So outline what you're trying to do. Tell them who's your target readers. What's the goal of your book? Why are you writing it? Who are you writing it for? How are you trying to use it in your business? Only then can people give you useful feedback. So that's the first step. Next step is only pick a few people. Like say, we've literally seen authors send books to 10, 15 people, or again, ideas, and you just get so much feedback that it just becomes virtually useless. So only send it to a few select people. Then when it comes back, go through it very diligently and very carefully and assess it honestly. And be prepared to ignore all of it. You know your business better than anybody else. So if you think that, honestly, the feedback might come back and you might disagree with all of it, you certainly should, think carefully about things if that does happen. But trust yourself. It's your book, it's your business, and you know it better than anybody else. Usually what we find with that sort of process, and a lot of our authors do it, it's the feedback that is most useful is somebody pointing out something that they've missed. So the feedback is often, hey, look, it's really, really good, but why don't you have a chapter on this? So that sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely. Again, all due respect to your friends and family. This is, if you've written a novel, that's fantastic, but this is not a novel, it's something you're doing for your business. So get useful, valuable feedback from the right people.
Thanks for that. I think the other couple I'll save to the end because there's a few different topics. So I'll jump in later with the rest.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Megan. Okay, so and the last one, kind of mentioned this already. Is there a gap in your industry you can fill? So is there some sort of question, some sort of problem, some sort of issue that you just see clients having over and over and over and over again? Is that something you can write a book about and fill that gap? So here we go. So we're brainstorming. So this is the 50 odd topics that we've written down about our book. So 50 things we think we could write a book about, or 60 or 70 or however many you've come up with. Now, the next question to ask yourself is, which of these book topics will most benefit your business? So again, business, business, business. Everything comes back to what are you doing in your business? So you pick that one, and this will become the subject of your book. Now, next step is brainstorming again. So what we're doing now, so we've chosen the subject and you have to brainstorm again. So again, 50, 60, 70, 80 things you should be able to come up with about that topic. If you can't come up with lots and lots of topics, lots of kind of subtopics on your main topic, again, you've got to start thinking about whether you've chosen the right topic. And then again, pick around 8 to 12 of these that you think should go into your book. Now, someone mentioned getting feedback before. This might be the stage, once you've done this, might be the stage to start showing it to a few people saying, hey, I've come up with this plan for my book. What do you reckon? These will become your chapters. Create your contents list. So creating your contents list is a fantastic way to start writing your book. So each of the chapter topics at the top of the large piece of paper, I find that a good way to do it. I really like having something big stuck up on the wall. Do this however you like. Some people do it with sticky notes. Obviously, you can do it in a spreadsheet. I do find there's something about just having it written and stuck on the wall. You just literally stare at it and look really thoughtful with a glass of red wine and really ponder it. It's just a different psychology than staring at a spreadsheet. But obviously do that however you like. Under each of these chapter topics, add around these are the 7 to 10 subjects that we just came up with for each chapter. Arrange these into a logical order, and these are the subheadings in your chapter. So I know that's a little bit to get your head around, but so we'll do this. And so this is how it will look. So you see up the top, you've got the subject that you came up with for your book. So that's the main topic of your book. And then the green ones are the chapters that you came up with. And then the red ones are the subheadings for each chapter. Now, I know that's a bit of a whirlwind tour. And like I say, there's a much more detailed process behind it. But hopefully this will at least give you something to go away and think about. Now, something that some people find a little bit daunting, 35,000 words. A lot of people have never written anything that long. But again, if you break it down, so there's 56 little red subtopics there. If you write 500 words on each of them, that's 28,000 words already. And you add an introduction and a conclusion, you're up to 32,000 words. So suddenly it's not that hard. If you can't find 56 topics in your business to write 500 words about, again, I would suggest your business is probably in trouble. Okay. So that was, again, just a really quick whirlwind overview of how to write a book. And like I've said, I ramble on quite a bit, so we are starting to get a bit pushed for time. So I'm going to whiz through these a little bit more quickly than I usually do. Just some really quick publishing tips and some key things to think about. So cover and interior design. Will your cover designer also do your interior? The answer is maybe. So some people do both, some only do one, some do the other. It's up to you. It's not a problem at all if you find a cover designer you love who doesn't do interiors. That's absolutely fine. Just an issue to be aware with. You might need one designer, you might need two. You might have found a cover designer you love, but they don't do interiors. Can I format my book myself in Word or Publisher? You can probably guess what the answer is going to be. No, 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 don't do that. Word is a fantastic, absolutely fantastic word processing program. It's not a good page layout program, so don't do that. Stay away from Word for your layout. We use Word for all of our editing, but it's not used for layout. Content pro tips. Your book is not an ad or a brochure. So this is really, really important. Your book has to be written differently to other material that you write for your business. So when you write an ad or a brochure or anything like that, you absolutely are expected to rabbit on about how good your business is. That's what advertising is. When you write your book, the focus of your book is is you being an expert in your field. So it's a different kind of writing. So don't fill your book with, URLs and clicks. It links to your website and all that kind of thing. It's not an ad and it's not a brochure. Think about how well the book will fit in with your current products and services. So this is very important. Again, we're doing this for our business. So at the end of the day, your book is both a product and a marketing tool. So think about how it fits in with your business from that point of view. And this is a conversation I have often. Be generous with the information you provide. So my book outlines our whole process, the whole process. Nobody's going to understand that still as well as we do. So even though you could use it to go away and publish your book if you wanted to, and some people do, it's still for most people going to give them an overview, and they're still going to come back to us. So people sometimes worry about, if I put too much information in the book, they won't need me. That's really not what happens most of the time. So don't write your book in a way that kind of gives people 4 steps of a 7-step system and they've got to come to you for the rest of it. All you do is annoy people. The obvious exception to that is don't put your super top secret IP in there or anything like that. Don't put your secret sauce in the book, obviously, but do be generous with the information you provide. Really quick on copyright. How much of other people's material can I use without permission? There's no hard and fast rules, so be very careful with that. Most people use 200 words as a guide, which is a good rough guide, but there's no legal definition of how much you can use. How do I obtain copyright permission to use somebody else's material? Very simple, you ask them. So find out who owns the copyright. 99% of the time it's the author or the designer or whatever it is if you're using a cover. Find out who owns the copyright and just ask them if you can use it. Can I use substantial amounts of other people's material without permission if I acknowledge the source? And the answer to that is no. People sometimes think that acknowledging people is a replacement for permission to reproduce material, and it definitely is not. And just a really quick copyright and researching tip. Keep track of everything you source while you're writing it. So just start a Google Doc or a Word doc or whatever it is, and just have it open while you're working. And any source that you use, just throw it in there, the date you accessed it, the URL, that kind of thing. We have authors all the time who we say, oh, where did you get that? And they say, I wrote it 6 months ago, that bit, I don't know where I got it from. Okay, proofreading. What does a proofreader do? Proofreading is obviously a final read through by a person who hasn't seen your book before. Authors sometimes ask, will I get more feedback during proofreading? The answer is no. It's just a final check for editors. A final check for mistakes. Can my editor also be my proofreader? Absolutely not. Editors are still human and they'll still make a few mistakes as well. So your proofreader is also checking what your editor has done. My mum reads a lot. Can she be my proofreader? Only if you actually want to add more mistakes to your book. So we do hear people say things like that. Someone who reads a lot is not an editor or a proofreader. Someone who's an English teacher is not an editor or a proofreader. Make sure you get that professionally done if you want to produce a good book. Now, again, this may seem like it's a bit funny, but these things do happen. Should I visit a bookstore repeatedly to ask them to stock my book, then hassle them to put it in the window, then ask them why it isn't selling, then ask them why they haven't promoted it, and then ask them why they are withdrawing it? Don't do that. It happens. It really does happen. The second author I ever worked with 20 years ago now left a trail of destruction behind her. She annoyed the bookstores. She annoyed every interviewer she ever spoke to. My boss actually joked that he'd had a few glasses of red wine when he signed her up, and I think that was probably true. So don't do those things. You're trying to be a professional writer now, so absolutely be a professional writer. So now, I mentioned earlier on that I wanted to give you something to go away with. So that's the key. We've all been to so many of these talks and we say, oh, that was interesting, and we go away and we don't actually do anything with it. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, choose a topic for your book. So again, just the process we went through earlier. Prepare your contents list. Email it to me for feedback within 2 weeks. Now, I can't emphasize this enough. This is not you will not go on any email list. You will not be upsold. There will be absolutely no selling, no anything if you do this. The purpose is not for me to get something out of this. It's for you to get something out of this session. It's to motivate you to go away and within 2 weeks have used the process we mentioned before to come up with some ideas for your book. Now, these contents lists often develop over time and you might put more work in it. The only reason we're doing this is to try and get you started. So that's just a little challenge for you, for anybody who is interested. And for the Mission Impossible fans, and that's it. So if you do want more info about anything that we've talked about today, visit our website, call me, email me. So I'm absolutely your publishing guy from now on. Any questions you've got, feel free to email me, give me a call. There's stacks of info on our website. So go to the free section. It's all sorts of articles and videos and that kind of thing. Again, 100% free. Don't have to give your email address or anything like that. Lots and lots and lots of really useful info there.
Thanks, Michael. I have a couple of questions if you have a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got as long as anybody needs.
Okay, so someone made a comment that they have a kind of stereotype that traditional publishers are more safe as they can reach greater audience, and more audience equals more profits. Do you feel that's correct? How many bestseller are self-published?
Yeah, so a few very good points there and questions people often have. So in terms of being safe in inverted commas, there's really no safe option in terms of traditional publishers versus self-publishing. There are traditional publishing companies that have made a mess of things, and there's one who went under a year or two ago in Australia with a huge scandal. They weren't paying their authors properly and all that kind of thing. So there's no real difference between traditional and self-publishing in that regard. There are very, very good traditional publishers who are completely reliable. There are very, very good self-publishing services that are trustworthy and completely reliable. In terms of sales, now I mentioned before there's no right or wrong, again, a difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing. They are both good options. It's all about what your needs are for your individual book. So in terms of the sales, if you are focusing on sales, if you really do want to, you may have more success with a traditional publisher. The reason for that is traditional publishers do have more grunt behind them in terms of distribution and publicity and that kind of thing. So when I was managing editor John Wiley, I could pretty much ring up any bookstore and have a chat to them and get them to do what I wanted, basically, because we were a major Australian publisher. As Publish Central, we still talk to bookstores, we still do all those things, but we don't have the same grunt behind us. So if your goal is to sell books, if that is your main goal, you may have more luck with a traditional publisher. But if you do put more effort in as a self-publisher, we work with virtually every bookstore in Australia. Our distributor distributes books, to every corner of the country. If you hire a good marketing and publicity company, you can still get very good sales. But if that is your focus, probably traditional is the way to go. But then you have to factor in all the other things we talked about before, about timeframes and that kind of thing. Now, with regards to your question about self-publishing authors being bestsellers, So the very, very, very best sellers we've worked with have sold probably 5,000 or 6,000 books, which is very good for a self-publisher, very, very good indeed. Most of our authors, literally sell a couple of hundred, if that, because again, like we talked about before, it's not their focus. So if they focused on it, they would no doubt sell more. I've honestly probably sold 100 copies of my book in terms of actual traditional sales, but I've probably sent out like 500 copies. So it is about thinking about what you're doing and why you're publishing your book. But if you are aiming for sales, you may have more success with a traditional publisher.
Thanks for that. Now, the next one, bearing in mind that you have a bunch of geeks and people interested in solving world's problems with digital enablement in this session,
Yep.
what are you looking for? What do you think there is a real market for at the moment with regards to topics?
That's almost an impossible question to answer, honestly. You'll have to look at your own individual industry and see what issues you can solve for your individual market. There's, I could. It's that question's almost putting things, the cart before the horse a little bit. You could tell me just about any topic, and I could find a way to turn that into a good angle for a book for you. So, have a think about what your target readers would want, your particular area, where the gaps are, that kind of thing. If I could answer that question in any really constructive way, I would have gone and started a publishing company and just become a multi-millionaire myself, publishing all these books. It's all about the angle that you take, structuring it to your target audience, doing the right marketing and promotion, that kind of thing. So yeah, that question is putting the cart before the horse just a little bit.
Sure. I guess then you don't have that red Ferrari yet, do you? No Lamborghini, maybe.
No, I don't have the red Lamborghini.
Not quite.
Not quite. No, definitely not, unfortunately.
Another one, and then the last one I have is more of a statement, but one here that says, how much normally would a proofreader charge authors? Any idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of ideas. So a 35,000 word book, like we've talked about, you should be paying about $500 to $700 for a good proofreader. So again, like we talked about, find someone who's got experience. Don't let your neighbor who reads a lot do it for you for $200. Again, we're trying to produce a professional standard book. If you're doing it for your business, if you produce a poor book, you'll actually shoot yourself in the foot and do your business damage. So you do it to a high standard or don't do it at all. Make sure you get professional people all the way along, and that includes proofreading. But yeah, to specifically answer that question, you should pay about $500 to $700 for a proofreader for a 35,000 odd word book.
And early on, I didn't want to interject early on, but there was a comment which is, I used Scrivener software to write my novel. Yep. I don't know how I'd done it without it. It was originally iOS only, but they released a version for Windows, and it's about US $80 for a lifetime license. So that was just a comment someone wanted to jump in and add early on.
Yep, that is exactly what I was talking about. So if you've already used Scrivener and you've found it good, keep using it. I suggest to authors not bothering. There are issues with Scrivener as well, especially for these kinds of books versus a novel. So you do have to go on a learning curve for a start if you haven't used it before, just like any software. And this is one of the things people use, that you've got to get every obstacle out of your way. Writing a book is hard. So many people think they're going to do it and they don't do it. Writing a book for your business, just get down and get started. Don't even spend 2 hours. And again, if you've already done it, that's fine, use it. But if you haven't done it, don't spend time sitting down and researching what software you should buy and learning how to use it, and then finding out it doesn't do the export function that you need and all these sorts of things. Just about every book I've worked on, hundreds of books in the last few years, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. 99.9% of them come in Microsoft Word. And I know you can export to Word from Scrivener, but we can tell when that's been done. That's not what people are doing. So honestly, we've already spent more time on this issue than we should. Sit down in Microsoft Word and write. The number of people who start their books and don't finish them is just massive. So get every obstacle out of your way that you can. Don't make learning new software another obstacle that you put in your own way. The things you need, so like I say, I wasn't joking before when I said the only thing you need is Microsoft Word. The other things you need when you're actually writing is bold and italics. That's it. Don't make it look flowery. Don't make it look beautiful. Don't spend hours picking a beautiful font. do the minimum amount of formatting you need to do. And this goes for tables and diagrams and everything. Do the minimum amount of formatting you need to do to show what you're trying to show. Because the first thing an editor is going to do and the first thing a designer is going to do is rip out everything you've done. So you're just wasting your time doing that. And again, you're just putting another obstacle in your own way. So keep it really, 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 really simple. You don't need anything more than Microsoft Word. And again, if you've already done Scrivener, that's fine, use it. But if you haven't done it, don't waste your time getting started with it.
Thank you. Thank you. That was all the questions, Michael. Thank you so much for such an interesting session. I certainly learned a lot. I feel like I'm going to go write a book now, but I never thought I had thought of that before. So
Excellent.
You've almost given me the Kool-Aid. I just need a topic. And
I want to see your topic in my email within 2 weeks, Megan.
Thank you, everybody, for dialing in, and hope you got a lot of value out of the session, certainly as much as I did. And thank you, Michael, for putting the time into getting involved in this. I know it's a topic not fully relating to Microsoft 365, but I know many people in this industry who probably have a good book or two in them who could, help drive knowledge across others and all of that. So thanks so much.
Yep, no worries. Thanks for having me. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And like I say, if you've got any more questions, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email.
Thanks very much, everybody. We'll end the live event now. Remember, the recording will be in the YouTube playlist or channel. I'm probably saying that wrong, like I did Scrivener, whatever it was. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you in another session.